Many will be unrecognizable as they complete their final days in the swamps. Some will have lost up to 30% of their body weight.
Let's go. A little momentum will help you out.
On average, 43% of the class will drop out or be lost to injury. But for those with the will to endure, the experience will serve to galvanize the unshakable bond vital to the Rangers.
The reason we continue to fight and remain a cohesive group is because we know we can't let our buddy down. If we do that, then we'll all die in combat, and that's what allows these Rangers to continue to take the next step.
After graduation, many of the new Rangers will rejoin their former infantry units. But for those assigned to the 75th Ranger Regiment, rigorous all-terrain training will remain a constant. On the modern battlefield, their role as the Army's fast attack force will increasingly put them at risk amidst the chaos of city streets.
Probably the most dangerous scenario that we enter is entering into an urban environment and fighting at night. You have to watch your front, rear, flanks, up above you, below you.
There are so many places where the enemy can engage you from, and you really have to know what you're doing and be in control in that situation to survive and have your boys survive.
Under the watchful eye of Ranger officers monitoring 63 surveillance cameras, a company of 75th Regiment Rangers fast ropes from a UH-53 assault helicopter to begin their attack on a simulated enemy town. Protected by a deadly wall of fire from the helicopter's door gun, the men will quickly cut power to the area. With darkness and surprise on their side, the three squads will work building to building. Through their powerful night vision scopes, the Rangers must rapidly distinguish civilian from enemy as they race to recover the hostages that are the objective in tonight's raid. Each 12-man rifle squad is armed with M4 carbines or M16 rifles. Weapon squads will include gunners armed with squad automatic weapons and light anti-tank weapons. But the waiting enemy is also heavily armed. The Rangers know that casualties will be a likely outcome in this raid. All of the Rangers are trained to take care of their own, even as the fight continues for control of the area. But none of the Rangers are prepared for the simulated crash of one of the helicopters. Immediately, the men of the 75th must begin to fight their way to rescue the downed pilot. Each of them knows that this is a scene grimly reminiscent of one of the most harrowing chapters in Ranger history.
You're watching Army Rangers here on the History Channel. You're watching Army Rangers here on the History Channel.
In June of 1993, during Operation Restore Hope in Somalia, UN peacekeeping forces came under increasing attack by the men of local warlord Mohammed Adid. When an ambush in Mogadishu killed 24 peacekeepers, the decision was made to send in the Army's secret anti-terrorist Delta Force to capture or kill Adid. To provide the firepower needed to support Delta Force, a company of Rangers from the 75th Regiment was deployed to Mogadishu, a primitive city racked by civil war. The combined unit, dubbed Task Force Ranger, arrived in Somalia August 23rd. Roaming bands of militiamen and their primitive armed trucks seemed no match for the airborne strike force.
We were the Rangers. We had the guys from Delta with us. We had the best pilots in the world with us. Who in the world would even think about messing with us?
Well, what the Rangers didn't understand was that the Somali militiamen were some of the most skilled veteran street fighters in the world, because many of them had been fighting all of their adult lives.
The Somalis were well armed with M16s and AK-47s, as well as rocket-propelled grenade launchers, or RPGs. But Rangers met only light opposition on their first 6 raids into Mogadishu. On October 3rd, a bold plan to snatch Adid was triggered when the warlord and his top lieutenants were rumored to be meeting at a house near the Olympic Hotel in a dangerous area of the city. A handful of Delta Force operators would go in first, swooping onto the target house from Little Bird helicopters.
While they were raiding the house, the Rangers would come in on the Black Hawk helicopters and rope down to the street on all four corners around the block where the target house was located. They would spread out and form a perimeter to protect the Delta guys who were operating inside and to keep any of the Somalis they were after from getting away. As this was going on, a convoy of trucks and Humvees would pull up to the front of the target house. They would load the prisoners on, the Rangers and the Delta guys would all pile on the trucks, and they would barrel out of the city.
As the strike force lifted off from the edge of Mogadishu, word spread that flaming roadblocks had been spotted below.
I remember them saying they were burning tires, and I got a feeling of, do they know we're coming?
In this declassified video, shot from an orbiting command helicopter, the 4 Black Hawks, each loaded with squads of 12 Rangers, flare to a standstill above the corners of the Olympic Hotel and deploy their 100-foot ropes.
So we kick out the ropes. I remember the door gunner, he had this big USA, no fear, across his helmet. And he goes, remember, no fear. And I'm like, yes, screw you, you're not going in.
You get on the rope and it's like a big fireman's pole. And as you're going down it, you're just trying to control your fall so you don't crash and burn at the bottom. I can hear my heart beating in my ears. Got my gloves off, got my weapon into action. And within a minute, the bird was flying off, the dust was clearing, and we knew we were in a hot area.
In spite of heavy Somali fire, the mission was right on schedule. The assault force had captured 6 of Adid's advisors, but not the warlord himself, when a flash in the sky drew the Rangers' attention. One of the Black Hawks circling to provide fire support was suddenly struck by a Somali rocket-propelled grenade.
The bird started to cant to one side and counter-rotate. And I remember seeing people moving inside the aircraft, and it was almost as I was trying to believe what I was seeing.
In an instant, the 8-ton Black Hawk plunged to the ground 4 blocks from the hotel. As it hit, the objective of the mission changed completely.
There's an unwritten rule that if you go down or you get wounded, that I will risk my life, may even get killed, to come in and get you out.
But to reach the wreck site, the men of the assault force would have to pit themselves in a nightmarish race with thousands of hostile gunmen.
If we don't get there before the Somalis do, they're going to overrun that crash site. Any possible survivors we might have had are going to be overwhelmed. The bodies are going to be mutilated, dragged through the street.
The first onto the crash site were the Rangers who fast-roped out of the orbiting search and rescue helicopter. As they reached the 2 surviving crewmen, most of the rescuers found themselves under fire for the first time.
Your body knows what to do, your mind knows what to do. You didn't really think too much about, you know, oh God, you know, here comes another grenade, here comes another bullet. It was strange, really. It doesn't hit you until days later, when you actually have time to look back in hindsight and think, my God, you know.
As the rest of the assault force approached to form a perimeter around the downed Black Hawk, they found that the wreck had become the rallying point for every armed Somali fighter in the area.
When you talk to the pilots who flew overhead, they'll tell you, you guys just had no idea the numbers of people that were massing around you.
When a second Black Hawk was shot down, the Humvees and trucks of the Ranger ground convoy were rerouted through a wall of fire toward the second crash site. With their ground relief gone, the assault force was stranded in a 360-degree gauntlet of fire.
As the fire sprayed down the wall, one of the guys just went limp, and a red cloud just came from his head, you know, and he immediately collapsed. And that was probably one of the first people I saw that really got hit. Something in my head told me, he's dead. And we're in it now.
There's people screaming, people getting shot, and it's real world. But reality isn't really a good word for it because it is so unreal At some point, at every different point in the battle, a lot of guys made peace with the fact that, well, you know, if I die here, I die here.
At dusk, the 30-minute mission had stretched to 3 hours. Without their night vision devices, the Rangers were forced to seek cover.
We got taken a number of casualties, and we had finally kicked in a door and gone into this little house, this courtyard.
Inside the flimsy structures, the wounded Rangers realized that the thin walls would provide little protection from an AK-47 round or a hand grenade.
You know, there were times you were laying there, you know, against the wall of a building thinking at any time a bullet's just going to come through this wall and take me out right here and now.
As the encircled assault force waited, an armored rescue convoy was organized. The column of Rangers, augmented by the Army's 10th Mountain Division and UN troops, began fighting their way toward the ambush site.
And we kept hearing over and over, convoy's on its way, the convoy's on its way.
But the wait would stretch till dawn. When the convoy finally arrived, the wounded and dead were quickly loaded. But one last surprise remained for the shell-shocked assault teams.
We got told that there is no room for you. You're not riding out of here.
There we were on our own. Maybe 35 of us, 40 guys left to run out of the city.
Hundreds of Somali guns still lined the escape route.
I didn't think I was going to make it when down that road. You were just trying to put as much cover fire as you can and mad sprint across that street.
Amazingly, none of the fleeing men were killed in their sprint to reach additional UN personnel carriers blocks away. Once safely outside the city, the stunned men were confronted with the toll of their 15-hour battle. 18 soldiers lay dead, many more severely wounded.
These guys were married, they had families, they had children, you know, why not me? You know, I had no children, no wife, you know, why not me?
How come I didn't get hurt and someone else did? Should I have done something better to help the other guy?
You know, when I sat down on my cot and looked around, and there were just empty bumps everywhere. You know, and it was almost unbelievable. It was like another bird's gonna come out there and land in a minute, and all those guys are gonna come pouring in like had happened all the other times, but that didn't happen.
Impact of the tragedy was felt immediately. Public outcry at images of Americans being dragged through city streets 12,000 miles from home triggered an immediate withdrawal of Task Force Ranger from Somalia. For those who survived the ambush, frustration is tempered with a sense of pride in the self-sacrifice and courage that withstood trial by fire. Despite their losses, 100 men had jointly held off an enemy of thousands to emerge from the worst debacle faced by American soldiers since Vietnam.
What do I take from that now as far as pride? Is the immense bond of brotherhood that those of us who have survived it have. You're not going to find that anywhere else in life.
It is a tradition that has guided the Rangers through triumph and tragedy across 6 decades and countless battlefields. Braving impossible conditions to lead the way and deliver the lethal blow against any opposition, Rangers know their survival will depend solely on their own unflinching resolve and steadfast belief in one another.
We will go in and we will go do a mission against overwhelming odds. We will bring all our people out if it's at all possible. Those are the values and the ethics and what we hold at heart as Rangers.
The Ranger Hall of Fame includes the first Ranger, Robert Rogers from the French and Indian Wars, but also Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox from the Revolutionary War, and John Mosby, the Confederate Ranger from the Civil War. But there's one military leader who is surely not in the Ranger Hall of Fame. He is General Norman Schwarzkopf, the commanding general during the Persian Gulf War. The Rangers had little part in that war because Schwarzkopf distrusted some special units. But it was about the only war the Rangers haven't had a piece of. For the History Channel,